Hello and welcome to this update on the Yarslow model railway. I thought I'd come this side of the camera, haven't been around this side for a little while, just to see how you guys were getting on. There's a few more of you since the last time we got together. Good to see all you new faces. A few ladies amongst you, that's good. Not enough lady modelers, so that's a good thing. Oh, nice guy with the beard at the back in the red. Anyway, let me throw a question at you. Where did June go? A minute ago it was May, and all of a sudden here we are in the first week in July. Well, there's been a few reasons, and here's some of them. Now, you guys that have been with me for a little while will know that the whole point of the layout is to make a journey between Midworth and High Marsh, and what I have done in the past is to run a series of trains to show you how you make that journey on the layout. Well, today what I'm going to do is the same sort of journey, but I'm going to run back to front. So we're going to start here at High Marsh, which is the traverser that sits at the end of the branch. If I come round the other end of the traverser without falling over the hoover, you will appreciate where this sits in terms of the layout. And here there's not a great deal been going on at High Marsh, other than one of the things that I've been doing is populating some of the trains, so there are a few more people in the DMU than there. So we've joined the DMU at High Marsh, and we take the short trip to Blowick Lane. Now, of course, not every DMU stops here, only the morning and evening services, so it must be an early morning train. But here we are at Blowick Lane, and there's been a few things going on here. I've improved the scenery. You'll notice there's some hedges up on the bank, and I've basically filled in with trees and bushes behind the station. So here's the scenic work that I've been doing with the trees and the big bushes and the fences to try to settle the station into its background. And at low level, this is what we've got. Now, this is going to be difficult to see because of the bright light, but I have also started work on the lane, and what I've done is to use my favourite polyfiller stuff, the cracked ceiling repairer, to just make some tracks in the lane there and fill the gaps in the corners to give the whole thing a bit of texture. Maybe that's the best view to show that texture. And that scenic treatment has continued along the branch. Trees at the back, lots of bushes, a lot more of that polyfibre waiting to be turned into foliage. And then we get to the bridge and the river. Now, the river has now had a coat of varnish. It's only had one coat so far, but it's had paint on the bottom. So far so good, beginning to look better. And then this end is still very much a work in progress. I've got the fences in and bits and pieces. So that's Butterbump there, and you'll see as I move down here that the river is quite dark, and that's because I do have a light here and a light there, but I need one in the middle. I do have them, they're sitting over there in boxes, but I haven't yet got round to putting them in. But you can see why I need to put them in, just to get rid of this dark bit in the middle, and then the river might have a bit more life about it. When I talk about scenery, I'm talking really about 5 or 6 layers of scenery that goes into making this type of view, and this is a long way from finished. But I start, as you'll know, with my poly texture, painted brown to give this sort of appearance, and then over the top a bit of green flock, and then paint in the bare faces of the grey rock, bit of white or very light cream as highlight. A lot of places left brown or left exposed. This is just polystyrene, left exposed and painted. And the flock, base flock, shows through to give a kind of scrubby appearance underneath the static grass. And then I use this clump foliage, different colours, light, mid and dark green, to create some ground texture, small low bushes, that kind of thing. And then the woodland scenics tree armatures, which are painted brown and grey, covered in the fine leaf foliage and surrounded by the lichens, which need covering with foliage of course, using the fine leaf foliage as a bush itself, alongside the clump foliage, the static grass and the base flock. You start to build up this picture of textures. So our train crosses the river and runs into Butterbump, where perhaps we meet somebody. And you'll notice here there's fencing at the line side, and you can just about see there is some fencing sitting on the platform that I will be using to run behind for safety reasons. And there's also, I'm playing around with the buildings in the background. I'm going to just point this out to you, and that is that the building that's here used to be there, and the garage used to be there, and I've played around with them because I think it looks a little better like that. And I've also added, if I just move the camera slightly to the left here, right rather, I've started to add some fencing between the factory and the main line. It's only sat there for the minute, but you can see that I'm going to use some spear fencing just to cordon off the factory from the main line. And that's beginning to come together. I've got a bit of fencing up on the bridge. Up there, I can't get that in focus because the building's in the way, sorry. But Butterbump is now beginning to happen. I've obviously got some scenery to do over this far side, so I've got to come over here with scenery. But it's coming together and I'm quite liking what I'm seeing here. The main development at Yarslow has been around the Two Beaches Cottage, which sits in the corner here. If I pan out, you can see that that's where it sits, and you can see why I refer to it as the Two Beaches Cottage. And within the overall scheme of things, it sits right in the corner beyond the road overbridge. Now the end panel here and the tree and the foliage makes a very good scenic view blocker where the main line arrives on the scene at Yarslow. And our coastal train, the one that we're going to get down into Trinity Square, arrives from Northborough in platform 1 at Yarslow, hauled as usual by the standard class 5264. The driver, incidentally, here is a Model U 3D image of me, although you wouldn't know it. There's more passengers in the coaches, as I mentioned earlier. And having joined the train, we then leave. This is the country end of Yarslow. You can see in the top right Beaches Cottage. And our train wends its way out of Yarslow under the bridge. And at the right hand end, the building which serves the permanent way yard now also acts as a very good view blocker, stopping our view of the train as it disappears off scene onto the circuit or back into the storage sidings. So one very simple but important job that I've done recently is the installation of 3 signals. They don't work and they're not meant to be signals, they're purely markers to show in the storage sidings when you're standing at the operating position where the point work ends and the running line begins. And this is because I have had a couple of instances where I have reset the points whilst the train is still traversing that point work and thus derailed the train. So these simply act as markers. The third one here acts as an indicator of how far you can go on the inner Trinity Square storage sidings without running into a middle junction. The master cab control panel is still working perfectly. I haven't rewired it yet. And all of that TV cabling has disappeared now into trays under the layout, so that all you can see is this, a little bit more tidying up to do, but this is all that is left. I've got another camera to replace the broken one. This is the view of middle junction. Here at Trinity Square, off scene, a box has appeared over the entrance tracks, and that basically, now that I've ballasted in there, means that if you're standing at the operating area here, you end up with a train arriving from a dark space, and that looks a lot better than being able to see it arrive round the bend. So that to me is a massive improvement. And that's us about done for this month. Work, as you can see, continues. I'll leave you with this pano of the shed as requested by some, just to show you where everything fits in. Glad to have you along. I'll see you soon.